The distress signal reached the Galactic Council at midnight station time. Fleet Commander Velther's voice crackled through the speakers, filled with something the Council had rarely heard from a Draxian warrior uncertainty. His exploration fleet had found something in the restricted zone Alpha 7. Something that should not exist. The holographic display flickered to life in the Council chamber, showing a massive military station orbiting a blue and green planet. The structure was pristine, its metal hull reflecting starlight as if it had been built yesterday. But according to the station's design, it was over 10,000 years old. The architecture matched nothing in the current galactic database. It was human. Council Archivist Thunrak moved his 6 limbs nervously as he pulled up the ancient records. Most counselors thought humans were myths, stories told to scare young ones into obedience. But Thunrak had spent his life studying the old wars, and he knew better. Humans had existed. They had fought in the Great Purge Wars, a conflict so devastating that it had reshaped the entire galaxy. Then, according to legend, they had simply vanished, deep beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean. Warning systems that had slept for millennia suddenly screamed to life. Captain Hyun-woo jerked awake in his cryopod, his neural implants flooding his mind with alerts. Someone had crossed the boundary markers. Someone had entered the forbidden zone. The pod hissed open, and Hyun-woo stumbled out into the cold air of the Sentinel complex. His muscles ached from 10,000 years of sleep, but his training kicked in immediately. He moved through the underground facility, his bare feet slapping against metal floors that had not felt footsteps in ages. Dr. Yoonji was already at the main console when he arrived. Her fingers danced across holographic controls, pulling up data streams from the outer satellites. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with concern. She had been the chief scientist when they went to sleep, and she was still the smartest person Hyun-woo knew. "How many?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. "1 fleet. Draxian, according to their ship signatures. They're scanning the orbital station." Yunji pulled up another display, showing the intruders' positions. "The automated systems are asking for authorization to respond." Hyun-woo felt a chill run down his spine. The automated systems were not gentle. They had been designed during the wars, when humanity had needed to protect itself from threats that could destroy planets. If those systems activated at full power, the Draxian fleet would cease to exist in seconds. "Hold them back," he ordered. "Wake the others. Wake everyone in command positions." Engineer Tae-young was the third to wake. He went straight to the power systems, his hands shaking as he initialized reactors that had been dormant since before most current galactic civilizations had discovered fire. The Sentinel complex hummed to life around them, lights flickering on in sections that had been dark for eons. Above them, Fleet Commander Velther made a decision that would change everything. He ignored the automated warnings that played in his command deck. The messages were in a language his computer could barely translate, something ancient and harsh. They told him to leave, to turn back, to forget he had ever seen this place. But Velther was ambitious. He saw opportunity where others might see danger. "Scan that planet," he ordered his science officer. "I want to know what resources it has. If it's unclaimed, it belongs to the Draxian Empire now." His science officer obeyed, though her scales rippled with nervousness. The scans went deep, penetrating through the planet's oceans and crust. What they found made no sense. Massive energy signatures, thousands of them, buried across the entire world. Technology that the scanners could not identify, could not even classify. Power readings that exceeded anything the Draxian Empire had ever built. "Commander," the science officer whispered. "This technology, it predates our civilization? It predates all known civilizations. What is this place?" Velther did not answer. He was staring at his tactical display, watching as a single small object detached from the planet's moon. It was a satellite barely larger than a fighter craft. It moved toward his fleet with lazy confidence. In the Sentinel complex, Hyun-woo watched the satellite activate. It was one of the older models, a simple defense unit from the early warning network. It had one job: disable threats without destroying them. That had been humanity's way in the end. Disable, don't destroy. Contain, don't kill. They had learned after so much blood that there were better ways. The satellite reached the Draxian fleet and stopped. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, simultaneously, every weapon system in Velthar's fleet went offline. Shields collapsed. Navigation computers froze. Even the basic life support systems stuttered before backup power kicked in. The ships were still intact, the crews were still alive, but they were helpless. Floating in space like debris, Velthar's command screen flickered, then displayed a message in perfect Draxian. The translation was so precise that it made him shudder. Whoever had written this understood his language better than he did. Leave. This is your only warning. The fleet commander's pride wanted him to fight, to find a way to respond. But his survival instincts were stronger. He ordered his fleet to retreat, their ships limping away on emergency thrusters. As they crossed back beyond the boundary markers, their systems suddenly restored. Everything worked again as if nothing had happened. It was a demonstration, he realized. A gentle one. Whoever controlled that satellite could have killed them all, but they had chosen mercy. Back on Earth, Hin-Wu watched the fleet disappear from the sensors. He should have felt relief, but instead he felt dread. The galaxy had found them. After 10,000 years of peaceful sleep, the rest of the universe knew that humans still existed. Dr. Yunji stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "They'll tell others," she said quietly. "The whole galaxy will know within days." "I know," Hin-Wu replied. He looked at the displays showing Earth's defense network, all the terrible power they had put to sleep because they had been too dangerous to be trusted with it. "We chose to hide because we were afraid of what we'd become. Now we have to decide if we're ready to face them again." Tae-Young joined them, his tablet showing the status of awakening facilities across the planet. Thousands of cryopods were beginning their revival sequences. The Sentinel complex was coming alive, and with it, humanity's long nightmare of isolation was ending. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what came next, or whether humanity had slept long enough to forget how to be anything other than what they had been, the most dangerous species the universe had ever known, the emergency. Session of the Galactic Council began in chaos. Representatives from 5 major civilizations filled the Grand Chamber on Prime Station, their voices overlapping in a dozen different languages. At the center of it all stood Fleet Commander Velthar, his Draxian armor dulled with shame. Recounting his humiliating encounter with the human satellite, Counselor Myra of the Yolan Collective listened with growing horror. She was a historian by training, and unlike many of her colleagues, she had actually studied the ancient records. While Velthar spoke, she pulled up her own data. Projecting it onto the main display for all to see, the images showed regions of space where physics itself seemed broken. Stars that aged backward. Planets split perfectly in half. Entire solar systems where time moved at different speeds. The galaxy called them void scars, treating them as natural phenomena, cosmic mysteries that science could not explain. But Myra had found the truth in the old archives. Every single void scar dated back to the same era, the era when humans had fought their wars. "These were not natural," Myra said, her voice cutting through the noise. "These were testing grounds. Humans did this, and then they left. The question is, what else did they leave behind?" Ambassador Kale from the Benton Federation rose to speak. He was old, even by his species' long-lived standards, and his voice carried the weight of experience. "My people remember humans," he said quietly. "Not as monsters, but as protectors. 10,000 years ago, when the Varax Empire came to destroy us, humans intervened. They saved my ancestors. Then they vanished." War Master Gorn of the Krellin Armada slammed his massive fist on the table. His species valued strength above all else, and he saw opportunity where others saw danger. "If they are few in number, we should strike now, before they wake fully, before they remember what they are capable of." The council erupted into argument again. Myra advocated for caution. Kale pleaded for peaceful contact. Gorn demanded immediate military action. The vote, when it finally came, was inconclusive. The Council was divided, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. On Earth, the Sentinel Council faced their own divisions. Admiral Jihai paced the command center like a caged predator. She had been a fleet commander during the last days of the Purge Wars, and she remembered exactly what humanity was capable of. "We need to prepare for war," she insisted. "The galaxy has forgotten what we are. When they remember, they'll try to eliminate us before we can threaten them again." Dr. Yunji shook her head. "We left because we couldn't stop fighting. Every problem we faced, we solved with bigger weapons, more power, greater destruction. If we return to that path, we prove that nothing has changed." Lieutenant Sumin sat at her monitoring station, listening to their argument while scanning galactic communications. Her screen showed military buildups near the quarantine zone. 3 different civilizations were moving warships into position, each claiming they were there for defensive purposes only. "They're already preparing to fight us," she reported. "Whether we want war or not, it's coming." Captain Hen Wu stood at the center of the command deck, feeling the weight of impossible choices. He had reviewed the historical logs while the others argued. He had watched recordings of the Battle of Kepler 442, where human forces had faced the Varax Empire. The battle had lasted 1 day. The Varax Empire, which had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for 3,000 years, had simply ceased to exist. Humanity had won so decisively, so completely, that they had horrified themselves. That was when they had decided to leave. Not because they had lost, but because they had won too well. Because every victory had made them stronger, more efficient, more terrifying. They had looked at themselves and seen monsters wearing human faces. "We can't hide anymore," Hien Wu said finally. "But we can't reveal everything either. We need to show them enough to make them cautious, but not enough to make them desperate." His words were interrupted by alarms. Sumin's fingers flew across her console as she pulled up new data. "Incoming object," she announced. "It's broadcasting as a diplomatic probe from the Krellin Armada." Tae-young ran the probe's signature through their analysis systems. His face went pale. "It's not a probe," he said quietly. "It's a planet-killer missile. They've disguised it, but I recognize the power signature. If that thing detonates in our atmosphere, it will crack the planet's crust." Admiral Jihai's expression hardened. "I told you. They're testing us. They want to see if we're weak." Han Wu made his decision. "Wake Dae Hyen. Tell him to prep a fighter." Pilot Dae Hyen had been dreaming of flying when the wake-up call came. He stumbled to the fighter bay still half asleep, but the moment he settled into his cockpit, training older than most civilizations took over. His fighter was ancient by modern standards, built during the Purge Wars using technology the galaxy had forgotten was possible. The launch was smooth. Dae Hyen's fighter burst from an underwater bay and climbed toward space in seconds. His targeting systems locked onto the approaching missile immediately. It was big, crude by human standards, but powerful enough to do its job. He could destroy it easily, but that would send the wrong message. Instead, he did something more difficult. As his fighter closed with the missile, he activated systems that bent the rules of reality. His ship moved through space-time differently than normal matter, existing partially in several dimensions at once. To Krellin sensors, it looked like he simply teleported next to their weapon. Dae Hyen's console showed him the missile's control systems. They were primitive, easy to access. He spent 30 seconds rewriting its programming, changing its target, adjusting its detonation parameters. Then he accelerated away, his fighter moving at speeds that should have torn it apart. Protected by fields that the Krellin had never imagined possible, the missile completed its journey, crossing the quarantine zone boundary, then turning around. It headed back toward the Krellin fleet, moving faster now, adjusted by human modifications. War Master Gorn watched in disbelief as his own weapon came home. It detonated harmlessly in empty space, far from any ships, a brilliant flash of light that hurt nothing but Krellin pride. Then Gorn's communication system activated without his permission. Dae Hyen's face appeared on the screen, young and tired and completely calm. "We remember how to fight," the human pilot said. Do you remember how to stop? The transmission ended. Daehyun's fighter vanished from Krellin's sensors, returning to Earth as if it had never been there. Gorn sat in his command chair, staring at the empty screen, feeling something he had never felt before: genuine fear. Not of death, which he had faced many times, but of the possibility that he had just challenged something far beyond his understanding on Prime Station. The Galactic Council watched recordings of the encounter. They saw the human fighter move in ways that violated physics. They saw their weapon systems compromised and controlled as if they were children's toys. They saw a demonstration of power that was simultaneously merciful and terrifying. Ambassador, Kale spoke into the stunned silence. They could have destroyed that fleet. They chose not to. Perhaps that should tell us something. But Counselor Myra was looking at deeper data, analyzing the human fighter's movements. That was one pilot in one ship, she said softly. According to our scans, there are thousands of those bays hidden across that planet. How many ships do they have? How many pilots? What else are they hiding down there? No one had an answer. The galaxy had found humanity, and now the galaxy was afraid. Dr. Yunji stood before the sealed doors of the Forbidden's archive, her hand hesitating over the access panel. For 10,000 years, these doors had remained closed, protecting the galaxy from knowledge that had nearly destroyed it. Now she had no choice. The Sentinel Council needed to understand what they were dealing with, needed to remember what they had locked away. The doors opened with a hiss of stale air. Inside, holographic displays activated automatically, filling the room with images of weapons that should never have been created. Yunji walked slowly through the archive, her footsteps echoing in the silence, and the others followed. Captain Hyunwoo stopped in front of a display labeled Reality Anchors. The description made his stomach turn. These devices could prevent faster-than-light travel across entire sectors of space. Any ship attempting to jump to FTL within their range would simply fail, trapping entire fleets in normal space where they could be dealt with conventionally. During the wars, humanity had used them to isolate enemy civilizations, cutting them off from reinforcements and supplies. Admiral Jihai found something worse. Stellar compressors, she read aloud. The display showed a star collapsing, aging millions of years and hours. We built these to destroy enemy strongholds hidden in solar systems. We could make their stars go supernova on demand. But the worst was what Taeyang discovered in the deepest part of the archive. Quantum cascade weapons, he whispered. The description was almost too terrible to believe. These weapons didn't just destroy targets, they erased them from all possible timelines. A ship hit by a quantum cascade wouldn't just explode. It would cease to have ever existed. No wreckage, no survivors, no historical record. Just gone as if it had never been built. Young technician Haewon, who had woken only hours ago, accidentally triggered a historical simulation while examining one of the displays. The archive systems came alive. Projecting a full recording of the Battle of Kepler 442, the Sentinel Council watched in horrified silence as history replayed before their eyes. The Varax Empire had been massive, powerful, ancient. They had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for 3,000 years, crushing any civilization that challenged them. When they had turned their attention to humanity, everyone had expected the humans to fall quickly. Instead, humanity had mobilized only a tiny fraction of their fleet. The record showed it was less than 1% of their total forces. The battle itself was almost anticlimactic. Human ships moved through space using technology that made FTL look primitive. They didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed the devices stored in this very archive. Reality anchors trapped the Varax fleet in place. Quantum cascades removed their command ships from existence. When the Varax tried to retreat to their home systems, they found their stars aging rapidly, becoming unstable, forcing evacuations. Within 24 hours, the Varax Empire was gone. Not defeated, erased. Their territory empty, their people scattered as refugees, their entire civilization reduced to a footnote in history. And humanity had done it casually, efficiently, without even using their full strength. We were monsters, Yunji said quietly. That's why we left. We couldn't stop being efficient at destruction. On Prime Station, Ambassador Kale was conducting his own research. Unlike the other counselors, he had access to Benton historical records that went back far enough to remember humanity directly. He found what he was looking for in the archives of his ancestors, a first-hand account of human intervention against the Varax. The Benton had been a young civilization then, barely capable of interstellar travel. When the Varax had come to conquer them, the Benton had prepared to die fighting. Instead, human ships had appeared in their system. A small fleet, no more than a dozen vessels, had placed themselves between the Benton homeworld and the Varax invasion force. The human commander had sent a simple message to the Varax: leave these people alone. When the Varax had refused, the humans had disabled every Varax ship without firing a single destructive shot. They had used something the Benton called quiet weapons, technology that could stop enemy ships without killing anyone. Then the humans had left, disappearing as quickly as they had come. Kale established a covert communication channel to Earth, using encryption methods that his ancestors had learned from humans. Millennia ago, Dr. Yunji responded to his transmission with cautious hope. They spoke carefully, both aware that if other counselors discovered their communication, it could be seen as conspiracy. "Why did you leave us?" Kale asked. It was the question that had haunted his people for 10,000 years. "We needed you. The galaxy needed protectors." Yunji's face on the screen showed deep sadness. "Because we couldn't stop," she answered. "Every threat we eliminated made us stronger. Every victory taught us new ways to fight. We were becoming what we fought against. We looked at ourselves and saw conquerors who pretended to be protectors. So we chose to leave before we became the very thing the galaxy needed protection from." Kale shared his intelligence. War Master Gorn was gathering allies, building a coalition. He was arguing that humanity, while dangerous, was vulnerable now after 10,000 years of sleep. If the galaxy struck first, struck hard, they could eliminate the human threat before it fully awakened. Several civilizations were listening to him. While they spoke, Gorn's plans were already in motion. Without council authorization, he launched his attack. 5,000 warships from a dozen different species gathered at the edge of the quarantine zone. It was the largest military fleet assembled in modern galactic history. Gorn believed it would be enough. Admiral Jihai detected the fleet the moment it entered the Forbidden Zone. Her face showed grim satisfaction. She had predicted this, had warned them it would come. "Permission to activate the Aegis network?" she asked Hyun-Wu. The captain hesitated. The Aegis network was Earth's planetary defense grid, a system so powerful that it existed partially in higher dimensional space. Activating it would reveal capabilities that humanity had kept hidden even during the Purge Wars, but they had no choice now. "Activate it," he ordered, "but minimum force. Disable, don't destroy." Across Earth, every human felt the activation through their neural implants. It was like a gentle vibration in their minds, a call to purpose that their ancestors had designed into their genetics. Combat specialist Jae-sung, who had trained for this exact scenario 10,000 years ago, led the response teams. They didn't use traditional ships. Instead, they activated weapons platforms that existed in spaces between dimensions. Invisible to normal sensors, the battle lasted 4 minutes. To Gorn's fleet, it seemed like their ships simply stopped working. Weapons offline, shields down, propulsion dead. Life support flickered to standby mode. Not a single Krellin ship was damaged. Not a single crew member was injured. They were just stopped, floating helplessly in space, completely at humanity's mercy. Hyun-Wu's voice broadcast on all galactic frequencies. Every species, every civilization, every ship in known space heard his words. "We did not want this," he said, his tone firm but not angry. "We left the galaxy because we were too good at war. We will not return to that path. But we will defend ourselves. This is your final warning. Leave us in peace, or learn why our ancestors feared what they had become." The Aegis network released its hold on Gorn's fleet. Their systems came back online slowly, as if waking from sleep. The War Master sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed his fleet had been completely helpless. He had brought 5,000 ships, the might of a dozen civilizations, and humanity had stopped them in 4 minutes without destroying a single vessel. That, Gorn realized with cold certainty, was the truly terrifying part. They could have killed everyone. They had chosen not to. Humanity was showing mercy, and that mercy was more frightening than any weapon because it demonstrated absolute control. You could only afford to be merciful when you were certain of your power. As Gorn's fleet retreated, the galaxy watched. Some called for immediate escalation. Others called for peace. But everyone understood now humanity was not a myth. They were real, they were awake, and they were exactly as dangerous as the legends claimed. The Galactic Council shattered within hours of Gorn's failed attack. What had been a unified governing body for thousands of years suddenly fractured into 3 distinct factions, each with their own vision of how to deal with humanity's return. The militarists, now led by War Master Rax after Gorn's disgrace, argued for immediate confrontation. They humiliated us, Rax declared to his followers. They showed mercy because they wanted to mock our weakness. If we don't act now, we admit that we're inferior to them forever. His faction began building an even larger fleet. Convinced that numbers alone could overcome human technology, the pacifists rallied behind Ambassador Kale. They saw humanity's restraint as proof that peace was possible. They could have killed thousands, Kale reminded the council. They chose not to. That choice matters. We should negotiate, not threaten. His faction sent repeated messages to Earth asking for dialogue. The isolationists wanted nothing to do with humanity at all. Led by an alliance of smaller civilizations, they proposed strengthening the quarantine zone, making it impassable and simply pretending Earth didn't exist. Let them sleep forever, their representatives argued. Our ancestors survived without them. So can we, on Earth, a different kind of awakening was happening. The Sentinel complex began reviving the full population, and across the planet, buried cities came alive with light. New Seoul, the underground capital built beneath the Korean peninsula, emerged from 10,000 years of darkness. Its towers, preserved perfectly in stasis, began to glow as power returned. Captain Han Wu walked through New Seoul's central plaza, watching civilians emerge from their long sleep. They looked around with wonder and confusion, seeing a world that had changed beyond recognition. Children who had gone to sleep as toddlers were still toddlers. Families remained intact, but the galaxy they would wake to was nothing like the one they had left. Teacher Yuna approached him in the plaza, her student identification badge still pinned to her shirt from the day she had entered cryosleep. "Captain," she said hesitantly, "where do we go from here? Do we even belong in this universe anymore?" Han Wu had no answer for her. How could he explain that humanity had chosen to abandon a galaxy that had needed them, only to wake up in a galaxy that feared them? He watched families reuniting, people crying and laughing, and he wondered if they had made the right choice all those years ago. Dr. Yunji's team made a disturbing discovery in the stasis logs. The records showed that when humanity had gone to sleep, there had been over 300 billion people. Now only 3.2 billion were waking up. The rest had chosen permanent sleep, something the stasis systems called infinite rest. They had been given a choice before the final shutdown wake when it was time, or sleep forever. Most had chosen forever. They didn't trust themselves, Yunji explained to the Sentinel Council. They were afraid that if they woke up, they would become weapons again. The people waking now are the ones who believed humanity could change. We're the optimists. The ones who thought we could be better. Lieutenant Su-min was monitoring communications when she found something that changed everything. Hidden in the background noise of space, encrypted in methods that only humans would recognize, were transmissions from other sources. She worked for hours to decrypt them, her hands shaking as the messages became clear. "Captain," she called Hyan Wu to her station. "Earth isn't alone. There are 12 other human colonies scattered across the galaxy. They've been awake this whole time, watching. They've been waiting for us." The revelation stunned the Sentinel Council. While Earth had slept, other human settlements had remained active, hidden in remote systems, observing the galaxy's development. They had ships, technology, and 10,000 years of advancement beyond what Earth possessed. And they had been silent, waiting for the homeworld to wake. The response came from beyond the galactic rim. Admiral Duyun's transmission reached Earth's communication arrays, encrypted with protocols that identified him as commander of something called the Wanderer Fleet. His face appeared on their screens, human, but different. His eyes showed the weight of centuries, his expression carrying knowledge of things Earth had missed. "You woke up too soon?" Duyun said bluntly. "The galaxy isn't ready for what you are. More importantly, you're not ready for what's coming." Haiyan-Wu demanded explanations. Duyun's fleet uncloaked at the edge of the solar system, revealing ships that made Earth's defenders look primitive. These weren't weapons from the Purge Wars, these were something new, refined over millennia of isolated development. The Wanderer fleet had been preparing while Earth slept. "We didn't hide out of shame," Duyun explained. "That was only part of it. We hid because our long-range sensors detected something beyond the galactic rim. Something vast, something hostile, something that makes the Varax Empire look like children playing with toys. It's coming, and it will arrive in less than 200 years. The threat was called the Devourers in the old human databases. They were not a civilization in any traditional sense. They were more like a force of nature entities that consumed entire galaxies, breaking down matter and energy into forms they could absorb. The Devourers moved slowly, taking millions of years to cross between galaxies, but once they arrived, nothing could stop them. Humanity went to sleep to prepare," Duyun continued. "We knew we couldn't fight the Devourers alone. We needed the galaxy to evolve, to grow stronger, to develop technologies and civilizations that could help in the coming war. But we also needed to be ready ourselves. The Wanderer fleet has been building weapons, researching, developing strategies. While you slept, we watched and learned." Haiyan-Wu felt the weight of this revelation crushing down on him. Everything he had believed about humanity's exile was incomplete. They hadn't just run away from their own violence, they had been preparing for something worse. "Why didn't you wake us sooner?" he demanded. "Because the galaxy needed time to forget you were monsters," Duyun replied. "If you had stayed active, they would have united against you eventually. But if you slept, if you became legends, then when you woke, you could return as something different. Not conquerors. Not destroyers, protectors," the word hung in the air. Protectors. It was what humanity had always claimed to be, what they had failed to be during the Purge Wars when their protection had turned to domination. Now they had a chance to prove it was more than propaganda. Teacher Yuna, who had been listening from the observation deck, spoke up. "The children who are waking up now, what do we tell them? That they were born to fight a war that won't come for 2 centuries? That we went to sleep so we could wake up and save a galaxy that fears us?" Tae Young pulled up projections on the main display. The Devourers' approach path, their estimated arrival time, the projected casualties if the galaxy faced them unprepared. The numbers were staggering. Without preparation, without unity, without humanity's protective technologies, the galaxy would fall in less than a decade once the Devourers arrived. "We tell them the truth," Haiyan-Wu decided. "We tell them that their ancestors made terrible mistakes, but they also made one choice that mattered. They chose to try to be better. And now we have a chance to prove it. Not by conquering the galaxy, but by preparing it to survive." Admiral Jihai studied the data on the Devourers with a warrior's eye. "We have less than 200 years to unite a galaxy that currently wants to destroy us. Teach them to fight an enemy they don't believe exists. And build defenses against a threat that has consumed dozens of galaxies." "That's impossible." "Yes," Haiyan-Wu agreed. "But impossible is what humans do best. We just need to convince the galaxy to let us help them. And we need to do it before War Master Rex's fleet arrives to finish what Gorn started." On Prime Station, the 3 factions continued their arguments, unaware that their debates about whether to destroy humanity or negotiate with them were irrelevant. The real question was whether the galaxy could be saved at all. and whether they would accept salvation from the very monsters they feared most. The ultimatum arrived at dawn, Earth time. Warmaster Rax's message broadcast across all frequencies, his words chosen to humiliate and threaten. Humanity must surrender all military technology within 72 hours. They must submit to galactic oversight, allowing inspectors to monitor their every action. They must accept limitations on their population, their movements, their very existence, or face destruction. Behind Rax stood a coalition fleet of 50,000 warships. 12 different species had contributed vessels, setting aside centuries of political differences because their fear of humanity was stronger than their distrust of each other. It was, by any measure, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Rax believed it was unstoppable. On Prime Station, Ambassador Kale pleaded with the Council one final time. "This is madness," he shouted, his normally calm voice breaking with desperation. "You've seen what they can do. 50,000 ships won't be enough. 100,000 won't be enough. All we'll accomplish is proving that we're exactly what they feared. We would become violent primitives who attack what we don't understand." But fear had overtaken reason. Counselor Myra, who had once advocated for caution, now voted with the militarists. "If we don't act, we admit permanent inferiority," she argued. "Better to fight and lose than to bow without trying." The vote passed. Rax had his authorization. The coalition fleet began its final approach to the quarantine zone, weapons charged. Crews prepared for the battle that would define galactic history. In Earth's Sentinel complex, the debate was equally fierce. Admiral Jihai wanted to demonstrate overwhelming force, to show the galaxy exactly what humanity's full capabilities looked like. "If we're going to be monsters in their eyes anyway, let's be monsters. They'll never dare challenge again," she declared. Dr. Yinji argued the opposite. "The moment we unleash our full power, we become what we ran from. There has to be another way, a path that doesn't end in domination or destruction." Pilot Daehyun, who had faced the Krellin fleet alone, offered a different perspective. "What if we show them what our weapons were really built for? Not destruction, protection. Let them see that everything they fear about us can be used to save them instead." Han Wu listened to them all, feeling the weight of 3 billion lives depending on his choice. Then he made his decision. "Yunji, prepare a demonstration. Not of weapons, but of protection. Daehyun, you'll deliver my message to the Council. And Jihai, get the Aegis network ready. But we use it to shield, not to attack." The plan was audacious, maybe insane. Han Wu would address the Galactic Council directly, offering something that had never been offered before: a demonstration of humanity's true purpose. Not a threat, but a promise. The quantum broadcast reached every corner of known space. Han Wu's face appeared on countless screens, his voice calm and steady. "Members of the Galactic Council, people of the galaxy, you fear us because you remember our weapons. Let us show you what those weapons were really designed to do." On Prime Station, reality itself seemed to shift. The Aegis network activated, but instead of attacking, it created a perfect shield around the Council headquarters. Then Admiral Du Yun's Wanderer fleet decloaked in the system, their ships moving into defensive positions. But they weren't protecting Earth, they were protecting the Council. "Simulate an attack," Han Wu ordered. Earth systems created a theoretical scenario based on the Devourer's known capabilities. Holographic projections showed massive entities approaching Prime Station, weapons that could tear apart planets focusing on the Council's location. The galaxy watched as humanity's technology responded. Reality anchors activated, creating zones where the theoretical enemies couldn't use FTL to escape or maneuver. But the same anchors also prevented the enemies from jumping inside the shields. Stellar compressors, the weapons that could age stars to death, instead stabilized a nearby dying sun, giving it millennia of additional life, and the quantum cascade weapons. The most terrifying devices in humanity's arsenal, they demonstrated their true purpose. They could erase disease from existence. Corrupt AI that had infected systems could be removed from all timelines. Even the void scars, those broken regions of space, could potentially be repaired by carefully controlled quantum cascades. Every weapon had a defensive application. Every terrible technology that had made the galaxy fear humanity could be used to protect instead of destroy. The demonstration showed that humanity's true strength wasn't in breaking things, it was in preventing them from being broken in the first place. Teacher Yuna watched from Earth, tears streaming down her face. "This is what we should have shown them 10,000 years ago," she whispered. "Before we became monsters, when we were still trying to be heroes." The galaxy fell silent. Counselor Myra stared at the displays showing Prime Station wrapped in protective fields that could withstand planet-killing attacks. Ambassador Kale felt vindication and hope rising in his chest. Even War Master Rax, commanding his vast fleet, hesitated as he realized what he was seeing, but old hatred died hard. Rax gave the order to attack anyway. 50,000 ships activated their weapons, preparing to fire on both Earth and the demonstration around Prime Station. For a few terrible seconds, it seemed like nothing had changed, like violence would answer hope with more violence. Then Admiral Duyun's fleet moved, but not to attack, to intercede. The Wanderer ships positioned themselves between Earth and Rax's coalition, their shields raised, their weapons offline. They were taking the defensive position, daring the coalition to fire through them. Hyunwoo's voice broadcast again, but this time it carried emotion, sadness, hope, and determination. "We are not your enemies," he said. "We are not your rulers. We are your shield, if you'll accept us. We've seen what's coming, what threatens all of us. The Devourers will arrive in 150 years, not 200. Our long-range sensors confirm they've accelerated. We don't have time for war among ourselves." He shared the data, every civilization receiving the same information simultaneously. Scans of the approaching threat, projections of what would happen if the galaxy faced them unprepared, simulations showing entire civilizations being consumed. It was real, it was coming, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. Ambassador Kale seized the moment. "Vote," he demanded of the Council. "Accept humanity's offer of protection and cooperation, or reject it and face what comes alone. But decide now, while we still have time to prepare." The vote was close. Some counselors abstained. Others voted against out of pride or fear. But by the narrowest of margins, the measure passed. The Terran Accord was born. Humanity would share their defensive technology and train galactic forces to face the coming threat. In exchange, they would submit to oversight, their most dangerous weapons held under joint custody, their actions monitored to ensure they never again became the monsters they had been. War Master Rax refused to stand down. His personal pride demanded blood. But his fleet captains, seeing the truth in the human data, began to disobey orders. Ships broke formation, standing down, refusing to fire on people who had just offered to save them. Rax was stripped of command by his own subordinates. Removed from his flagship in disgrace, the shooting war ended before it began. Instead of destruction, the galaxy chose survival. Instead of pride, they chose pragmatism. And humanity, the forgotten protectors who had run from their own nature, finally found a path to redemption. Dr. Yunji transmitted the first defensive technology package to the Council shield designs that would protect civilian populations from attacks. Combat specialist Jae Sung volunteered to train alien soldiers in defensive tactics. Pilot Dae Hyon began teaching other species how to maintain and operate human-designed fighters. The great work of preparation began. 10 years passed. Captain Hyan Woo stood on Prime Station as humanity's first representative to the Galactic Council, a position he had never wanted but accepted out of duty. Across the galaxy, human instructors worked alongside alien engineers, building shield networks around vulnerable worlds. Young technician Haewon collaborated with Benton scientists. Her initial nervousness replaced by genuine friendship, Teacher Yuna opened the first interspecies academy on Earth, welcoming students from dozens of civilizations. They came to learn human technology, but also human history, the mistakes made, the prices paid. The lessons learned through blood and regret. Admiral Duyun's Wanderer fleet patrolled the galactic rim, their sensors constantly watching for the first signs of the Devourers. They had time, but not much. Every day brought the threat closer. Every day required the galaxy to become stronger, more unified, better prepared. On Earth, the population that had awakened began to truly live again. New Seoul bustled with activity, its streets filled with humans and aliens working together. The underground cities opened their domes, allowing natural sunlight in for the first time in millennia. Children played in parks that had been frozen in time, learning about a galaxy that their ancestors had nearly destroyed. Late at night, when Prime Station was quiet, Hyunwoo would stand at the observation windows and look out at the stars. He thought about the path that had brought humanity here: the violence, the exile, the long sleep, the awakening. They had been monsters who chose to be guardians. The galaxy had learned to trust them. If only barely, deep space sensors detected the first anomalies at the edge of known space. The Devourers were coming, right on schedule. But this time, the galaxy would not face them alone. Humanity had awakened not as conquerors but as protectors. And together with the civilizations they had once terrified, they would stand against the darkness beyond the rim. The forgotten protectors of Earth had awakened. The galaxy had watched in fear, then in wonder, and finally in hope. Now the real test would begin, proving that monsters could become heroes, that weapons could become shields, and that a species that had nearly destroyed itself could save everyone else. The vigil had begun.